about energy transition. Another day talk about the role of artisanal and small-scale mining in energy transition. Good morning and welcome to Voices from the Mines, brought to you by Ziva Community Initiative. My name is Unis Daniel Chukwebeka. Like we do every Friday from 9 a.m. till 10 a.m., we bring you Voices from the Mines, conversations around mining, conversations around energy transitions, and everything we need to know and how we can be a part of it. On the show this morning, we're talking about youth voices in clean energy shifts. What is the role of Nigerian youth in the energy shift that we need to experience as a people? What do we do, or what are we doing to ensure that our transitioning from fossil fuels to clean energy isn't just a thing of the just talking? It is something that we are actively involved in. And this morning on the show, to speak with me, I've got Bosan Kurah, who's a program lead, Just Green Center. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Emeka. Thank you for having me this morning.
It's good to have you here. Let's start off this conversation first. I like to ask this as an intro because every single time we have the show, there's always one person who hasn't heard us before, one person who doesn't know what energy transition means. So let me start from there. For you as a young person, what does energy transition, for the average person that listening out there, what does it mean?
So when we speak of energy transition, let me use this scenario. I saw a tweet on Twitter, and what was said was solar is becoming the new I better pass my neighbor. Yeah,
True.
and that perfectly captures energy transition because we're now moving. If we know what the energy used by better pass my neighbor is fossil fuel, and then when we move to solar, we're talking about renewable. So energy transition, in a sense, is the movement from non-renewable energy sources to renewable energy sources. And I say transitioning because sometimes we want to think it's like a black and white. We just jump from here and here. No, but if you check commitments in COP, it's mostly transitioning. So we move a little bit from where we are. For Nigeria, we're moving we're moving towards naturally liquefied gas, which will transition us into totally renewables at the end of the day. So we should look at transitioning in that sense.
Yeah. So again, you talked about transition. So let's talk about energy, because for the Nigerian youths, we are. Of course, we have the most populated. We have the most population in the country.
Yeah.
Africa is the fastest growing population in the world. In the year 2030, we'll have more African youth in the world than we have any other continent.
Yeah.
But the word energy can be a bit confusing for people. So let's break it down. What does energy mean to you in your everyday activity? Because me, for example, energy for me might just be the gas I used to cook my food because I like pizza and pizza bread. Right? So what does energy mean for you?
You want NEPA?
Our favorite people in the world.
However, it is. So I mean, NEPA comes to mind for those of us who've been a while. But energy is essentially the capacity to do work. And when I say capacity is, for example, you have fuel in your car, but the fuel has the capacity to move. You have the capacity to move the vehicle using the fuel. You can't use water because your engine does not run on water. So that is essentially what it is. It's static. It's fuel. And unless you begin to work it, it's static energy, which you would have. So capacity to do work at the end of the work. Yeah.
Now, in your community, you talked about NEPA, which is, I think, for many young people, whether they are skilled in the sense of, digital skills, or they are skilled in terms of those people, that they do things online. What form of energy is most common to you and is most common to your community?
Most common form of energy, and it's usually, is the one provided by government, national grid, and that's because I live within the urban areas. But we know, by virtue of some work we've done, we've also seen other forms of energy, biomass energy.
Is that popular?
Yes.
In Nigeria?
Like firewood. Charcoal, that's biomass energy, albeit not sustainable, But then we've seen those other forms. We've seen solar now very much rampant around the area. So those are forms of energy that are already getting prevalent within our society in these days.
As a young person, energy is very important for us, whether it's fuel, fossil fuel, whether it's power, energy like PHC and NEPA that we call them. I remember some years ago, not some years ago, kind of like, yeah, some years ago, if they say like 3-4 years ago,
Yeah.
when I used to be very much into digital space and you had to deliver jobs for your clients.
Absolutely.
And you would be praying to God that NEPA does not do what NEPA does. Because if for any reason you have a deadline for, say, next week Monday, and in your head, I can do this work in 2 days, so let me just wait till like Friday I'll start. Because normal now, if you finish and maybe then Friday you start, then NEPA says, you know what? I have in mind your village people just called me today and they just cease power for the whole weekend.
Yeah.
How do you as a young person deal with energy shortage, especially in a world where we are transitioning from offline work to online work?
And this is, I mean, you finally put it. Case in point last year, where in quotes our grid was falling in.
Have in schools. I asked for school specifically because I used to teach in a secondary school. And whenever we had, because the school I was teaching at the time, very highfalutin thinking, man, like, I want my children to be tech savvy. And so we had classes where we're teaching them, to learn code. I imagine you're teaching, of course, you're not laptops, your desktop. You're teaching children, say Python, for example, and 10 minutes in power goes off. So you have to start over from the beginning. So how disruptive is power shortages to businesses, to schools, and also to people's mental well-being as well?
I read somewhere that for countries who have steady power supply, it's directly proportional with development.
True.
So we look at the West, the US, we look at Europe, and then we want to think, it's something, it's magic they did. No, they've been able to amply supply power, and we're beginning to see it again with Kenya. I was seeing the other day that Kenya has so much power that they're looking for where to release it to.
Kenya,
and now,
Kenya here.
Yes, Kenya here.
Wow.
and they're beginning to do, and they've moved from, and they're beginning to explore crypto mining. And they're the largest, they're one of the largest, they have the largest group of crypto miners in Africa. So begin to,
Kenya.
in Kenya. So begin to look at that. That is empowerment on a scale that Nigerians don't know about. Because we are power deprived, we're power poor. Our businesses cannot run. Now we're talking about a liter of fuel at 900. You could afford it before, but now at 900, which means that whatever energy you would want to use, for example, to power your shop, as a welder, as a tailor, whatever, I mean, MSMEs, it's becoming more expensive to run your business. And in another sense, it becomes more expensive, for example, to make your clothes.
True.
Because if I would use lights to iron your clothes, and then I'm buying 1,000 naira 4 units, then you have to pay for that.
More, true.
You have to pay for that. So that's one. And I remember clearly in school one time I was going to write exams, and then the next day, and then there was no light in the night. Like literally was power out for that night. So. And then we're using e-copies. You're supposed to read, though. You're supposed to read. I've been now.
Oh my days.
So we had e-copies, and then you couldn't read on your phone because your phone was out, your devices, laptop, whatever it is you were using was out. And in that sense, you begin to say, okay, and then the quality of education, you begin to question the quality of education in that sense. If I cannot be able to read, for example, then I mean, what do you think I'm going to write the next day?
True.
Right? So I think it's pretty critical. And I want to say this, that no one is excluded. It's all inclusive, right? Everyone feels the pain. Young, old, male, female feel the pain of energy poverty or energy deprivation, as it were. So it's far-reaching, the consequences. And I tell you, we don't know how much we can cover, how much ground we will make if we ensure everyone gets energy justice.
Speaking of energy justice and the conversation around energy, so some months ago, I think probably last year, I remember I was in was it a subreddit? I think it was a subreddit, and the conversation was around the increment in tariffs, and we're going back and forth. And this person, somebody was trying to explain to us why the tariffs had been increased and all of that, and it got me thinking. As the young people, do we understand where our energy comes from? Because when we have conversations around energy, whether it's the privation or poverty or the injustice of it, we seem to just imagine in some part of our head, again from my observation, that it just happens. Mm-hmm. Do we truly understand energy sources? And if we do, to what extent do we? Again, you go to universities, like you said, night classes are endemic for not always having light, especially when it comes to exam time. I do not know why. For those of us who don't like school, we just go to sleep because that's like me, I'm not thinking myself.
That's so.
Now, when we have this conversation, people go like, oh, they should pay. I remember one time in this state, I heard that investors just was owing millions of naira.
Yeah.
In terms of source, do we know it? Do we understand it? Are we entrenched intellectually in energy source as young people?
So whether we know it, I think we're more aware now than we were a couple of years ago due to the challenges that have come out now. When we were little, I mean, Kanji Dam was like the source for us. Yes. Hydropower. In primary schools, you'll be taught Kanji Dam and then Shiroro Dam at the end of the day. But over the last few years, Nigeria's energy is not necessarily, most of Nigeria's energy, 70%, is through gas.
Oh.
Right, through gas, and I don't think a lot of people know that. Yeah. So like you're just saying, whether we understand where we get energy from as a nation, I don't think young people are aware.
Do you think an increase in awareness would not just change our perspective, but change our attitudes with energy?
Absolutely. When I think, and it said knowledge is power, right? Yes. And in a very practical sense, for me in my house, for example, I know the load, the amount of light that we consume at home. I have an idea of what that is. That helps me be more responsible with energy. right? So I don't turn off. I know the kind of bulbs I buy.
True.
I know the kind of appliances I buy. Now there are energy saving appliances, so you want to get those kind of things that would ensure that, in one sense, there's an increment, subsidies being removed on energy, and there's increment. But in another sense, you're looking at how you can reduce the amount of energy that you use. And so I think it's one way responsibility, responsible consumption, right? I think it's one way that we can.
you talk about responsible consumption, and it's joggles my memory to some weeks ago. We had some children here during Children's Day, and we were talking about the things they learned in school.
Yeah.
Talking about turn off your water. I remember this is personal experience. I used to tell my family when I was still in Lagos, like, you guys don't have to leave this water running. If you want to brush your teeth, you don't have to use two. You know, one cup is enough for you.
Yeah.
Why using 3 cups? Like, there's water there now. And even as I try to explain to them that while you see water here, some other person somewhere is dealing with the consequence, right? The water is not infinite in that sense.
Absolutely.
It has some level of finiteness to it.
Absolutely.
But I'm seeing kids again. Maybe that's a one-off. I don't know how it is these days in school. How much do you think our educational system is doing to entrench in our minds the need for what of a better word, respectable energy consumption? Do you think we're doing enough educationally?
I do not think so. I honestly would say I do not think so. And a fine way to check that is what we see around, is to see what happens in homes, and how we deal with these things. And like you're saying, someone in my area would tell you that I dug the borehole, it's my water. So what's your business? My water.
Use it anyhow.
I pay for the lights, now your lights. Exactly.
Sure.
So we don't really understand that we have to create a balance at the end of the day, because if I'm responsibly using, then it means that someone else can get this excess that I am wasting at the end of the day. So I think we have to find a way to sensitize and make aware, so that so that we can understand that this, as much as it's not in so much supply, even the little that we have, we still have quite a lot of waste that we're doing.
Sure.
And there's a lot more places we can reach with the energy that we're wasting.
A lot more places we can reach with the energy we are wasting. Before we go on our first commercial break, let's talk innovation. As young people, I remember, based on the work I do, I get to, fortunately and unfortunately, get to read the number of stuff. There was a point that I don't even know of the business, so I don't even promote them, so I'll not call them name, where they started to make inverters, but it wasn't inverters in that sense. It wasn't the typical inverter you have to charge the way it says.
Yeah.
So it was, again, energy saving batteries, where you take it to an energy store, forgetting of the store, like let's call it a rechargeable store, where they will charge it for you. That business model is amazing though. They charge, so it's like you take your phone, but it's not a phone, it's like a box. You take the box to this store, you can't just charge it anywhere. They charge it for you, you pay for it, you take it back. Innovation, I don't know how much they got from that innovation, but we've also seen, like you said, solar panels becoming quite popular, smaller panels these days. Once upon a time, solar panels was for the high and mighty.
Yeah.
Now, the average person
Affordable.
sort of can get solar panels, but we are seeing more inverters. For example, I know that people now have chargers and power banks for their laptops.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's amazing. What sort of innovations have you seen? What sort of innovations do you think, as young people in Nigeria, we are preferring to the problem of energy shortage and also its wastage?
So I would say for us it's just Green Center, case in point. We had an incubation program some 2-3 years ago, where we had a couple of innovators coming, and then the question on the table was, let's find a way to sustainably generate electricity. And it was remarkable what these 3 young men could do. The first one was able to create a waste to energy system.
That is something I think we're not doing enough.
Exactly.
So explain how that works.
So waste to energy is that the waste that we have is being burnt, and that heat energy is converted to electricity. And this is not just hearsay, right?
Yeah.
Because we saw it in real time. He was able to power the TV in his house. He was able to power some appliances in his house.
Hold on. So like my garbage.
Yeah.
The things I'm like, I'll go through it.
Exactly.
He took them.
Yes.
transform them to electrical energy.
Yes.
And use it in his house.
Use it in his house. So, I mean, and this is just one part, because when we now talk about the waste problem that we have around this part of the world, then it looks like we are helpless to take care of it. When we see such innovations and such opportunities to harness it and then develop energy space. The other guy, remarkable stuff, your spoiled stabilizer, he takes it and he transforms it to an inverter. Your spoiled stabilizer, Rebecca. I mean, the one that you just dump in one corner of your house, and then when they come, you're doing scrap with it. No, he takes it and he converts it into an inverter.
My question is, with these innovations, why then are we at this level? Because I know that, for example, we generate a lot of waste. Let's not even go far.
Yeah.
If you go to any of the markets, you would see waste in abundance. Probably too much waste.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I also think about when it comes to waste in Plateau State and Jos is the biodegradable waste. I think we generate a lot of it because we have a lot of food.
Mm-hmm.
Why are these innovations not going mainstream? And do you think, again, just to segue a little, that in terms of government intervention for innovative solutions to energy problem, are they intervening enough? The ministries in charge of this, are they doing enough to support, to encourage, and to finance these innovative ideas?
Right. So maybe in recent terms, and maybe because I've been in the space, in recent terms I can say there has been a lot of progress, but prior to this last 2-3 years. For example, 2023 Electricity Act, which now allows you, Emeka, to generate electricity and distribute a certain amount of energy that you can distribute.
Do people even know that?
Exactly my point. So people don't know that. Maybe some people know that, and they'll say, for like Plateau State, for example, I think, because I heard concretely, they're beginning to look at harnessing that clause in the act. So we're in a meeting one day, and then the commissioner was mentioning that they've identified wind corridors in Plateau State. So they want to set up windmills. They want to set up a windmill system for generating electricity. Recently, I also heard that now there's a site that they're trying to establish a waste-to-energy plant for Plateau State. So, like I said, it may not be so obvious now. Maybe when these things begin to come into fore, they will begin to say, "Oh yes, they're working and they're working and they're working." But by and large, prior to now, there wasn't so much done. And then for young people, like these incubators, like these guys that I talk about, funding is a huge part of it, because to upscale that system, for example, he can use it to you can use it in your smalls. But if you want to talk about generating for 2-3 households, it's now talking about a lot of money. Even though you have the knowledge, and of course, it will need a lot more upskilling, because that was at the most basic level. Good. So you need to upskill, and then to be able to distribute to us. So funding is a huge part of it. Upskilling is a huge part of it, and mentorship. So
I want to hold you on the funding part, because every time maybe it's a personal grasp of mine that I have with venture capitalists.
Okay.
Every time you hear a venture capitalist invest in a business, most times it is a fintech business. And again, maybe it's just a personal grasp I have. There was a research done some years ago, and not years, 2023, 2022, that the highest amount of venture capitalist money in Africa goes to fintechs.
Yeah.
So let's come to Plateau State. Like you said, funding is a problem, because I've also been in Twitter spaces where conversations around energy escape, because I think waste management is a big problem that we seem to sort of gloss over somehow.
Absolutely.
And the conversation, we're bringing up innovative ideas, how to manage waste, waste money and all of that. In terms of funding, again, government can't do all of that. What are possible solutions to, again, plateau-centric funding for ideas like this? What do you think the solutions could be, such that when such ideas from such hubs are brought to the table, they are not left on the table? There's money for them to upskill, money for them to scale, and money for them to not just be, oh, nice idea, but God will help you. What are the possible solutions to this?
This is So yeah, like you rightly mentioned, government cannot, and I mean maybe cannot in this time, because every time you want to check online and then you're saying that there's no money, there's no money, there's no money as far as government is concerned. But we've done something in Just Green Center, right? We've pulled money together, getting to for the last 3-4 years, and millions. I mean, continuous growth into millions, and we've been able to fund green startups, right? So there was a green startup we invested this money in, and to talk about it now is because we've done it consistently for 3-4 years, and we know that that's a model that can thrive, that can work, that can help fund some of these spaces. As much as it's not so much money, yeah, but at least to a certain level, you know that you can be able to fund a little bit of it. The funding issue around renewable energy is a worldwide issue. So I wouldn't want to say peculiarly just for Plateau State or just for Nigeria. It's worldwide. So I think, well, they say the developed world should give us the money to.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Of course.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah, but I think it's a worldwide issue. If they make commitments, for example, at the COP meetings, then they should follow those commitments with action, right? Yes. And well, I don't know. Funding wise,
I have a very crazy yet I think it's practical idea from the wisdom of the Lord upon me.
Right.
I think we can have a venture capitalist,
Okay.
like a venture a team or a business organization
Yeah.
that is solely funding green energy solutions. Right. The same way. Even though I know that we don't have a lot of it right now, but I hear a lot of venture capitalist conversation, and more often than not, of course, I know that what they are solely involved in is for their profit margins.
Exactly.
They don't really care, to be honest. They don't
At
really care.
all.
But if we can have some balance, especially in terms of, I know I'm going to be funding this green energy solution. However, I would not be expecting 150% return on investment in 2 years. Maybe there has to be a middle ground on the ROI expectations. I think that would be it's just especially for green energy. Maybe not so much money because, like you said, it's a big problem around the world. If we can have such specific venture capitalists, I think it gives for a more balanced ecosystem. Because if solutions like this are being preferred and there's no money to fund them, it's very demotivating.
I would also add to that. Even if they can't devote most of their money to these ventures, there's what we call social entrepreneurship, right? Where you create your venture, and even if it's for profit, you still have a non-profit arm.
How of it?
Good. So you can say what for venture capitalists, if you're doing a fintech, it's fine, but as a fintech, have a way you can give back to the society. For example, you say, I'm picking up 1, 2, 3 innovators to help them upskill their ideas as part of.
I imagine saying this again, random thoughts.
Yeah.
For every 10 for-profit organization investing 1 or 2 non-profit.
Exactly.
Anyways, let's go on our first commercial break. When we come back, we'll be talking about energy transition, whether Nigeria is doing enough to get there. And the phone lines will be open so you can call in and share your thoughts and ask your questions. You're still on to Voices from the Mind. Go nowhere.
Every Friday on JFM, energy transition and climate change mitigation in Nigeria takes center stage, explaining the role of ASM in energy transition and climate change mitigation in Nigeria, with their objective to advocate and campaign for a full implementation of the Nigeria Energy Transition Plan and other global policies and treaties. Join Emeka Umesi and our seasoned resource persons on the role of artisanal and small-scale miners in energy transition and climate change mitigation in Nigeria. Fridays 9 to 10 a.m. only on J101.9 FM. Powered by Ziva Community Initiative Advocate for a Sustainable Community with support from Africa Center for Energy Policy.
Welcome back to Voices from the Mines, brought to you by Ziva Community Initiative. The phone lines are buzzing already. Let's pick one call before we start talking more. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, my brother.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, please go on.
Kurah, I'm calling from one blue express center that is to the country. Yeah. When we talk about energy, for this some few days ago, one of the dailies was saying that this could say they want to service their equipment. I was not to service the people. I used to service the coaching that was supposed to draw by. Now, as my brother was just in Nigeria, we have a lot to generate all this energy we are talking. Go to Anambra, the research work have seen that the coal in Anambra will give up to 5 countries, not only Nigeria, energy. And you go to every time we go to China. Part of those countries, many of them do coal. And even when you go to Plateau State here, they win this step, and go back to the sunlight and then. But we are not harnessing all this. Today in Nigeria, there's no industry of technology that they don't have electrical, electronic, metaphysics, and you name them. But what do we do? Because even universities are not supposed to be complaining of light. All those departments are supposed to get their own equipment. All those things, they read at least a portion that can service only the faculty or the department. But we continue depending the pressure. Now, what do we do? Because energy is what everybody in this country needs. Manufacturer cannot progress without energy because everybody knows that one very well. Even as a human being, if you don't have any, how will you start their own idea of making that communication? It's not. So we have to go back. Even the solar we are talking about, the components of like battery, etc. My son, yes, he said this solar system business, etc. Now, what was he saying? He said what is annoying him most is that when they come to install all these systems, they will go and get substandard equipment of the battery or the battery for the people. 2 days, 3 days, this thing will just pack up, which is not healthy. Why must Nigeria bring all this? So there is need for the. If you go to the limit now, my friend, I go advise when you leave this that studio. Take a research work, go to the limit and see. You see how boys there are generating a lot of things in that delivery market. Good morning. Mazu Kurah was my name.
Thank you so much for calling, Mazi. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Hello, don't be shy. Talk to me. Good morning. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear you. I think the network providers are angry. They're vexed. Let's speak this call. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Your name and your location.
Thank you. This is Evangelist Agada in the Swiss local government.
Evangelist Agada, please go on.
Voluntary essay to the executive chairman of the Swiss local government, Honorable Chief Marcos Enyamoseni.
All right, please go on, sir.
The leader of the campaign from ACC to PDP in the East. You guys, you are talking sense there in the studio. Actually, pertaining business. Our governor, Barrister Caleb Mufan, executive governor of Plateau State, I think this is what he wants the youth above women's business. So this kind of awareness they are doing it. This is a priority of our governor. Even the chairman of the local government has this interest so that the youth do. When youth and women have something to do, I think it is a plus in the state and the local government, especially to our former He has the youth and has to empower them in business. What this man is doing in Joseph is a wonderful thing.
All right, good. Thank you so much. All right, then. Thank you so much for calling. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Yes, I can hear you. It's good to have you back. Good morning. Your name and your location. Good morning. Benedict, it's a long time no here. Please go ahead.
Yes, I want to appreciate you for bringing in this particular important topic this morning and also having your guest in the studio. You see, power, the issue of electricity, talking about power, it has been centralized. I don't know if I can't be corrected. And if it has been centralized, taking it from the executive list to the executive list, I think it is high time for governors and people in charge. I'm thinking about commissioner for what do you call it? Commissioner for Indian State actually studying the responsibilities of getting these things done. They should be thinking on how to get this power generated in their own various states. Because if you're looking at it, in the way it is actually being channeled at this particular point in time, you understand that Nigerian government and the Nigerian leaders are so corrupt that they are not even mindful of what goes in and how the people are going to benefit. The most important thing that is on to them as leaders is how to generate and how to collect money in the name of taxes on the people. If you look at the Minister of Power, today is just talking about how to make sure that the Nigerian people are adequately fed with the money they pay on this high electricity tariff. What his mind of is that it's going to place this community on that A and make sure that they are paying high tariff on electricity. What he's concerned about is that how is he going to also make these people to be paying more? Today now, we are actually battling with the issue of whether they are going to increase the price of the unit of the tariff of electricity. That is what is even on ground now. The reasons, your colleague hosted somebody on Tuesday or Wednesday, and yet they are discussing here on this studio that they want to increase the tariff. So the question I'm asking is that people of that communities in that how have they been actually fed? Are you giving them quality service for paying this humongous amount of money on electricity? And how have you been able to improve on this particular supply? As I was talking to you today now, in my community where I stay, behind the Lama precisely, it is just complete 4 days today. I completed my registration this morning. 4 good days today, no single cent of electricity. And you are on that A. How do you manage these things? How did the poor man be able to carry out his businesses in darkness? And how do you even come to explain to people that they are on the air and you don't give them that to do? They pay high electricity tariff on darkness. Honestly speaking, I think it is high time for to start generating in public state, like I saw them doing in other states. Because Nigeria cannot control suffering, paying high and then receiving less.
All right, then. Thank you. Thank you so much for calling. Thank you for calling. The phone lines are still open: 090 55 66 66 99 or 081 218 77777. Let's talk about energy transition in the country. We have an energy transition plan, which was spearheaded by the former Vice President of Nigeria, Ziva, some years ago. Even though that plan, some say we are making progress towards it, there have been divided opinions on that. Are we as a country doing enough to get to net zero by 2030? If we are, what are the things we are doing as a country to ensure that we transition from fossil fuel to clean energy by the year 2030, and our emissions of carbon emissions are reduced to zero at the time we said we will get to that level?
So like I had earlier mentioned, we have the 2023 Act signed by Tinubu, the president, last year. We're already having, and that's just one of many policies that we're already having in place to ensure that there's some sort of transition as much as we fit into the global shift towards renewables. I wouldn't say we're moving as fast as we should, because I think we still have our eyes on our crude oil.
I know where they come from.
Now where the money they come from. But I think step by step we're getting there. And with this, like one of the callers had mentioned, we don't have to be entirely reliant on the national grid, right?
Yeah.
It's proven to us that it can fall anytime.
Yeah.
And stay down for as long as it wants to.
Sure.
So I would greatly encourage that there's power in community mobilization. So a couple of people come together, you have some funds, pull your funds together, your 100K, your 100K, your 100K. I mean, gather it together and ensure that you can, for example, have a solar setup. that just powers your house, even if not for the whole day, just powers your house for a certain amount of time.
Some Nigerians would say that if we as a people have to deal with our power, have to generate our power, some would say it's bad because what is government doing for us, right? So that's one question.
Yeah.
The second question I want to ask is regards to the electricity Ash talked about, where people can generate and sell, let me use that word, power to other people. In that framework, does it have to be governments? Say, for example, it has to be state governments. Can it be private individuals? If it is private individuals, are there rules or regulations or stipulations they must meet before they can venture into that?
Oh, of course. So starting from the last, yes, there are. It's available. It's open to everyone, private and government. Like one of us had mentioned, initially, power was generated from the national, and so I remember when I was in school, I would look. I schooled in Zaria, and I would look at the sun. And I'm like, why don't we have light when there's? I mean, it's hitting on you like terribly, and then we don't have light. And the thought was, why can't the school just have a solar plant, for example, to generate electricity? So with this act, that's where I'm going with this act, we now have the opportunity to do that. Of course, you can't generate so much more than what is being generated at the national, because that will also mean that you take a huge part of the market share as far as energy is concerned. But there's a certain amount of energy that you can generate, and that's just one of the requirements amongst many others that are. I would encourage to critically look into the act and see how we can fit in. For private individuals who want to generate and distribute, please look into it. There's so far is there, and that's for me the principal role of government, to provide the environment. So even if they can't provide the tools and the equipment, policies as such will provide you the opportunity to do these things.
Policies provide us opportunity to do these things. We've got 5 more minutes left to the end of the show. The phone lines are still buzzing. Let's pick 2 calls, then we shall take our buys. Olivier, good morning. Hello, good morning. Good morning, sir. Your name and your location. Israel from Shaka. Please go on.
Well, you see, Emeka, energy itself, your investment in energy can contribute in stabilizing your economy. But when you don't make that investment early and your economy goes down, the investment becomes more expensive. Look at it now. The investment that ought to have been made long time ago in our energy sector, probably hydro and other gas, they're not made. And look at the cost. Look at the cost of investing heavily in energy, able to stabilize the economy. So whatever way you look at it, it's still going to be expensive. The only way we can even make it easy for us is for both the government and private sector to begin to invest in other sources of energy. But with that, it's still going to be expensive. And if you are not willing to invest resources, it's still going to be more expensive in the future. Currently, the way it is, any source of energy you want to make investment in is still expensive, whether solar, whether wind, whether hydro, whatever way of investment in energy is expensive. So it's even better we do it now for the future to be able to stabilize our economy, probably improve the economy better than what it is now. But saying that looking for a cheaper way of investment, a cheaper source of energy now from the way it is not possible. The only easiest is for government to look for money and begin to invest now to avoid problems in the future. So,
thank you so much for calling, Israel. Like I said, invest now. If not, it will get more expensive in the future. Talking about expensiveness, talking about the monetary requirement and commitment, do you think that green energy, if we as a country fully endorse it and put our hearts to it, will be a cheaper alternative to fossil fuel, financially that is?
I believe so. I totally believe so. Given that the world there's a conversation about circular economy, right? Not linear economy. So the linear economy, we consume and we buy, we consume, and then we dispose. The circular economy is that we buy, we consume, yes, and then it keeps going round and round and round. in the long run, we might think, and that's why there's a distinction: renewables and non-renewables. The sun is always going to be there. The wind is always going to blow. There's always water that you can harness the energy from. But you see, for fossil fuel, we're talking about for some countries, we're talking about wells drying up.
Yes.
In as much as we'll be talking about 70, yeah, well, you might say 70 years is a long while, we should enjoy it before then. But when we get to the 70th year and it finishes, what happens at the end of the day? So in one sense, we can think like it's more expensive to go sustainable, and given the repercussions of not being sustainable, for example, your health, for example, your environment, for example, education, as we've mentioned. If you don't have light to read, if women are cooking with firewood, for example, the fume it's health hazard that we are not even looking at in one sense. So if you look at the pros and the cons at the end of the day, you're spending more money on renewables, yes, but you're saving a lot more than you're spending than you expect buying cheaper with fossil fuels.
Alright, sure, it's going to save more money with renewable energy than you do with fossil fuel. Like you said, it's a cyclical energy process. When you use renewable energy, you get to use it again. It doesn't earn, the cycle continues. So it means that in the end, in the grand scale, when you look at it holistically, you are not exactly losing out on anything, because there's no waste, and every waste is turned to energy, and this energy is good for you and good for your development. Well, final question before we leave and say our byes this morning. As young people, are we doing enough to be involved? And if we aren't, what do you think we can do more to be involved in energy transition in the country?
I wouldn't say we're doing quite enough, because, for example, we're not aware of what, like we had mentioned earlier, our energy sources. And once you're not aware, then you don't even have the capacity to be in the space. That's even the first, being aware. And then for those who are aware, we have some level of capacity, but then, like I also mentioned, we need to upskill, because the technologies, solar was a lot more expensive, like you had mentioned, quite a few years ago than it is now. Now it's much more affordable. That's because technology has advanced. That's because research has enabled it to be much more cheaper. So we need to upskill, right? And that's both individual and as far as government is concerned. In government sense, our curriculum, like one of the callers mentioned, electrical electronics in almost every university in Nigeria, and then we still grapple with energy issues around. So our curriculum needs to reflect the realities of the day. If we're saying we're transitioning to renewables, then we should be able to incorporate it in our curriculum. At the end of the day, engineers finish and they come out and they are able to manage your solar setup. They're able to build a wind energy system for us. And so if we don't begin to do that government-wise and individually, then we'll continue to have these issues as we continue to have.
Thank you so much, sir, for coming through this morning. I wish you could go any further, but like they say, time flies when you're having fun. This has been the size of the package this morning. We've been talking about youth involvement in energy transition. What do we do? What are we doing? And how much more can we do to ensure that we transition from fossil fuels to cleaner energy? Well, this has been Voices from the Minds, brought to you by Ziva Community Initiative. Next week, we'll be here again from 9 to 10 a.m. to bring you other interesting conversations as well as discussions. From me to you, stay out of trouble. Like I always say, stay out of trouble.